What happens when the man you gave up everything for throws you away like garbage? For Amelia Vance, this wasn't a nightmare. It was her reality. Her ex-husband Mark, a man dripping in designer suits and cruel intentions, stood in her dingy workplace, a smirk playing on his lips. He glanced at her stained apron, at her tired eyes, and laughed. "Still playing the starving artist, Amelia. I did you a favor. You were dead weight." He thought he'd left her with nothing but debts and shattered dreams. He was wrong. He left her with a fire. He had no idea that in the shadows a man worth billions was watching, and he wasn't just about to change her life. He was about to claim her right in front of the very man who tried to destroy her. This is the story of how a forgotten wife became a millionaire's bride. The scent of burnt coffee and bleach was the perfume of Amelia Vance's new life. It clung to her clothes, her hair, and settled deep into the lines of exhaustion under her eyes. Her world, once filled with the aroma of oil paints and turpentine in her sunlit studio, had shrunk to the four corners of the daily grind, a bustling but bleak downtown café. Here her artistic hands, which once coaxed life onto canvases, were now chapped and red from scalding water and harsh cleaning chemicals. Just 2 years ago, she had been Mrs. Mark Vance, wife of the rising star in corporate finance. Their life had been a curated masterpiece of cocktail parties, charity galas, and weekend trips to the Hamptons. Amelia had been the perfect accessory, the graceful, cultured wife who charmed his clients and decorated their sprawling colonial home with impeccable taste. She had placed her own promising art career on a velvet-lined shelf, believing in his dream, in their dream. She'd managed their social calendar, raised their daughter Lily, and poured every ounce of her creative energy into building a perfect life for him. The cracks when they appeared were hairline at first. The late nights he blamed on work, the scent of a different perfume on his suit jacket, the cold indifference that replaced his once adoring gaze. Then the cracks shattered their life completely. He'd announced he was leaving her over a cold dinner of takeout sushi. There was someone else, Tiffany, a 24-year-old marketing intern at his firm with a surgically perfected face and an ambition that mirrored his own. The divorce was a brutal, systematic dismantling of her existence. Mark, with his team of ruthless lawyers, painted her as an unstable, financially irresponsible artist who had contributed nothing to his success. He argued that her hobby was a drain on their finances. The home she had lovingly decorated was sold. The joint accounts were emptied. The judge, swayed by Mark's polished performance and documentation of his sole financial contributions, awarded Amelia a pittance. She was left with a mountain of legal debt, a few boxes of personal belongings, and their 5-year-old daughter Lily, for whom she had to fight tooth and nail just to get primary custody. Now their home was a cramped one-bedroom apartment above a noisy laundromat. The living room doubled as Amelia's studio and Lily's playroom. A single mattress on the floor served as Amelia's bed, tucked into a corner. Lily had the bedroom, a tiny sanctuary Amelia tried to fill with fairy lights and colorful drawings to mask the peeling paint and rattling window frame. Every dollar was a battle. A trip to the grocery store was a complex mathematical equation of coupons and generic brands. A fever from Lily could mean a devastating choice between medicine and the electricity bill. Yet in the quiet moments after Lily was asleep, Amelia would find solace. She would pull out a worn sketchbook and a piece of charcoal. Her fingers, stiff from washing dishes, would slowly rediscover their old grace. She drew Lily's sleeping face, the pattern of the water stains on their ceiling, the exhausted faces of her fellow commuters on the bus. Her art was no longer about beautiful landscapes or abstract concepts. It was about survival, resilience, and the raw, aching beauty she found in the struggle. It was her secret act of rebellion against the life that had been forced upon her. Her co-worker at the cafe, a kind, no-nonsense woman in her 50s named Clara, was her only confidant. "You've got a light in you, honey," Clara said one afternoon, watching Amelia sketch on a napkin during a lull. "Don't let that man or this place put it out." Amelia offered a weak smile. "This light doesn't pay the rent, Clara." "Not yet, it doesn't," Clara replied, wiping down the counter. Not yet. One rainy Tuesday, Amelia was running late for her shift. She'd been up all night with Lily, who had a nasty cough. She hadn't had time to eat and her cheap sneakers were soaked through. As she rushed behind the counter, her manager, a perpetually stressed man named Mr. Henderson, pointed a thumb toward a table in the corner. "Table 4 wants a word with you, Vance. And hurry it up." Amelia's heart sank. A complaint was the last thing she needed. She smoothed down her stained apron, took a deep breath, and walked over, preparing her apology. But it wasn't an angry customer. It was Mark. He sat there looking completely out of place in his tailored $1,000 suit. Opposite him, clinging to his arm, was Tiffany, dressed in a vibrant red dress that probably cost more than Amelia's monthly rent. They looked like they had just stepped out of a magazine, a glossy ad for a life Amelia no longer had access to. Mark's eyes roamed over her, a slow, deliberate appraisal designed to humiliate. He took in her faded uniform, her messy bun, the dark circles under her eyes. A cruel, satisfied smirk spread across his face. "Well, well," he said, his voice loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Look what we have here. Amelia Vance, the celebrated artist, serving coffee. Life come at you fast, didn't it?" Amelia felt the blood drain from her face. The clatter of cutlery and the low hum of conversation in the cafe seemed to fade into a dull roar in her ears. For a moment she was frozen, a deer caught in the blinding headlights of her past. Mark's presence was a physical violation, a trespass into the small, fragile world she was trying to build. Tiffany giggled, a high-pitched tinkling sound that grated on Amelia's nerves. She looked Amelia up and down with a pitying expression that was somehow more insulting than outright contempt. "Oh, Mark, be nice," she cooed, squeezing his arm. "She's working. It's admirable." The word hung in the air, dripping with condescension. Amelia's training kicked in a pathetic shield against the onslaught. "What can I get for you?" she asked, her voice tight and barely a whisper. Mark leaned back, stretching luxuriously. "Oh, we're not here to order. We were just in the neighborhood closing a deal, a big one, and I thought I'd see how you were doing. Looks like you're doing just great." His gaze swept the sticky tables and the cracked linoleum floor. "Really landed on your feet." Each word was a carefully aimed dart. He was performing, using her as a prop to demonstrate his own success to his new partner. He was showing Tiffany the before, so she could better appreciate her after. "I'm fine, Mark," Amelia said, her eyes fixed on a point just over his shoulder. She could feel the stares of other customers. Mr. Henderson was watching from behind the counter, his arms crossed. "Fine," Mark chuckled. "Honey, you look like you haven't slept in a week. And what's that smell, bleach? It's a far cry from your Chanel No. 5. He leaned forward, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial hiss. "I told you, Amelia, that art nonsense was a pipe dream. You should have listened to me. You had a good life, a comfortable life. You just weren't grateful enough." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. He had been the one to have the affair. He had been the one to walk away. He had systematically stripped her of every comfort, and now he was blaming her for her own hardship. The mention of her art was the cruelest cut. It was the part of her soul she had shared with him, the part he now stomped on with his expensive leather shoes. A spark of her old fire ignited in her chest. "My art was never the problem, Mark," she said, her voice finding a sliver of strength. "And I am grateful. I'm grateful for my daughter. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful I no longer have to pretend to admire a man with no integrity." Mark's smirk faltered for a second, replaced by a flash of anger. He wasn't used to her talking back. Tiffany, however, saw her opening. "Lily," she said, tasting the name as if it were an exotic fruit. "How is the poor thing? It must be so hard for her living like this." She gestured vaguely at the café. "Mark and I are looking at a new penthouse. It has a dedicated playroom with a view of the park. We'd love to have her over sometime, show her what she's missing." The threat was clear, a veiled custody jab. "We can give her a better life than you can." The fire in Amelia's chest blazed into a protective inferno. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. Before she could say something she might regret, a calm, deep voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" Amelia turned. Standing beside her table was a man she had noticed a few times before. He was a regular, usually sitting in the back corner with a laptop, always polite but quiet. He was tall and well-built, dressed in a simple dark sweater and jeans, the kind of expensive, understated clothing that screamed wealth more loudly than any designer logo. He had sharp, intelligent eyes and a quiet intensity about him. Mark eyed the man with disdain. "This is a private conversation. Mind your own business." The man didn't look at Mark. His gaze was on Amelia, a question in his eyes. "Ma'am, is this person bothering you?" The simple act of being seen, of being offered help, was almost enough to make her crumble. She swallowed hard and nodded, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. That was all the man needed. He turned his full attention to Mark. His quiet demeanor transformed, carrying an unmistakable aura of authority. "You heard her. It's a private conversation she no longer wishes to be a part of. I suggest you and your guest leave." Mark bristled, his ego pricked. "And who the hell are you, her new boyfriend?" "Picking them up at the coffee shop now, are we? Amelia Classy." The stranger didn't rise to the bait. He simply held Mark's gaze. There was a chilling stillness about him, a promise of consequences that made Mark's blustering seem childish. "I'm a customer who wants to enjoy his coffee in peace, and your voice is beginning to bother me. Leave. Now." For a long moment a standoff ensued. Mark, used to being the most powerful man in any room, was visibly flustered by this stranger's unshakable confidence. He looked from the man to Amelia and back again. Finally, with a scoff, he pushed his chair back. "Fine. I've seen all I need to see anyway." He sneered at Amelia. "Don't come crying to me when you can't make rent. My offer to take Lily full-time still stands, for her sake." He grabbed Tiffany's hand and stormed out of the café, the little bell on the door jangling furiously in his wake. The café was silent for a beat before the normal chatter resumed. Amelia stood there, trembling, mortification and anger warring within her. She turned to the stranger, her face flushed. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You didn't have to do that." He gave her a small, almost imperceptible smile. "No one deserves to be spoken to like that." "My name is Julian." He extended a hand. His grip was firm and warm. "Amelia. Amelia." He repeated, his eyes drifting for a moment to a small framed sketch hanging on the wall behind the counter. A charcoal drawing of rain-streaked city streets she'd put up to make the place feel a little more like her own. His gaze returned to her. "It's a pleasure to meet you properly." He released her hand, picked up his coffee cup from his table, and gave her a slight nod before heading for the door. As he left, Amelia was left with a profound sense of confusion, gratitude, and an unsettling feeling that this was not just a random act of kindness. There was something more in Julian's eyes, a flicker of recognition that she couldn't quite place. The humiliation of the encounter with Mark clung to Amelia like a shroud for days. His words echoed in her mind during the quiet hours of the night, fueling her insecurities. Dead weight, starving artist. I did you a favor. Was he right? Had she thrown away a life of comfort for a dream that was destined to fail? She looked at her daughter, sleeping peacefully, her small chest rising and falling, and the doubt turned to fierce resolve. She wouldn't let Mark's venom poison Lily's future. She channeled her anger and hurt into the one place she could control, her art. She started staying up even later after her exhausting shifts, sketching with a feverish intensity. She filled pages with the emotions she couldn't speak aloud, the shame of the café, the fury at Mark's arrogance, the fierce lioness-like love for her daughter. Her work took on a new depth, a raw, emotional honesty that had been missing from her more polished pieces from her previous life. A week after the incident, Julian returned to the café. Amelia's heart did a nervous little flip when she saw him walk in. He didn't sit at his usual table in the back. Instead, he came straight to the counter. "Amelia," he said, his voice as calm and steady as she remembered. "I was hoping I'd find you here." "Hi, Julian," she said, wiping her clammy hands on her apron. "Can I get you your usual—" "Actually, I'm here for another reason." He hesitated for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "I've been admiring your sketch on the wall for weeks." He nodded toward the charcoal drawing of the rainy street. "It's evocative. It captures a feeling, not just a scene." "Did you do it?" Amelia was taken aback. People rarely noticed the drawing, let alone commented on it. Yes, I did. It's just a little something." "It's more than a little something," he insisted gently. "I looked you up. Amelia Vance. Your early work, the landscapes from the Harrison Gallery show 5 years ago. It was good. Technically brilliant. But this," he gestured to the sketch again. "This has a soul. It's better." Amelia was speechless. He had researched her. He remembered a gallery show from half a decade ago, from a lifetime ago. He saw the evolution in her work, the very thing she had been pouring her pain into. "I own a commercial real estate development company," Julian continued, getting to his point. "We've just finished renovating a historic building downtown, the old Argent Tower. We've dedicated the main lobby as a rotating art space for emerging local artists. The first exhibition is in a month, and the artist we had scheduled just pulled out." He paused, his dark eyes holding hers. "I want you to be the artist, Amelia. I want to feature your new work. We'll cover all the costs, framing, lighting, catering for the opening night. We'll handle the press. All you have to do is create." The world tilted on its axis. It was an impossible offer, a life raft thrown to her in the middle of a stormy sea. Doubt immediately crept in. This was too good to be true. Why, she asked, the word coming out as a choked whisper. "Why me?" "Because talent like yours shouldn't be hiding in a coffee shop," he said simply. "It deserves to be seen." He handed her a sleek black business card. "Julian Thorne, CEO, Sterling Properties." The name of the company was vaguely familiar, but Amelia was too overwhelmed to place it. "Think about it," he said. "My assistant Elena will call you tomorrow to discuss the details if you're interested. I hope you are." With another small smile, he turned and left, leaving Amelia staring at the card, her mind reeling. Sterling Properties. The Argent Tower. It sounded impossibly grand. Could she do it? Could she produce enough quality work in just 1 month while juggling her job and Lily? The fear was immense, but it was eclipsed by a thrilling, terrifying flicker of hope. This was a chance, not just to make money, but to reclaim her name, her identity. To show Mark, to show the world, and most importantly, to show herself that she was not dead weight. She was an artist. That night she didn't sleep. Fueled by coffee and adrenaline, she spread a large canvas on the living room floor. She mixed her paints, the familiar, comforting smell filling her small apartment. And she began to paint. She painted the exhaustion of her fellow commuters on the 6 a.m. bus, their faces illuminated by the cold light of their phones. She painted the defiant joy of Lily splashing in a puddle. She painted the loneliness of her own reflection in the cafe window late at night. She poured all her pain, her anger, her love, and her fragile hope onto the canvas. For the first time in years, she felt truly, completely alive. The next day, Elena, Julian's assistant, called. She was professional, efficient, and incredibly kind. A contract was couriered over. The terms were beyond generous, a significant advance that would allow her to quit her job at the cafe immediately, a budget for materials that made her gasp, and a commission structure on any pieces sold that was heavily in her favor. It was real. Amelia walked into the daily grind 2 hours later. She found Mr. Henderson berating a new barista for frothing milk incorrectly. She took a deep breath, walked up to him, and handed him her apron. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I quit." For the next 4 weeks, Amelia worked like a woman possessed. She rented a small, dedicated studio space with her advance, a luxury that felt like a palace. Clara from the cafe would often bring her coffee and watch Lily for a few hours, marveling at the canvases that were piling up. Julian was a constant, quiet presence. He never interfered with her creative process, but he would stop by the studio once a week, ostensibly to check on the progress for the exhibition. They would talk for hours, not just about art, but about life, about dreams lost and found. She learned that he was self-made, that he'd built his empire from nothing, and that he valued authenticity and hard work above all else. He was thoughtful, perceptive, and he listened to her in a way no one ever had. He saw her Amelia not an accessory or a problem to be solved. A fragile, tentative friendship began to bloom, a bond forged in mutual respect. She found herself looking forward to his visits, to the sound of his calm voice, and the way his eyes would light up when he looked at her work. The night of the gallery opening arrived. The lobby of the Argent Tower had been transformed. Her paintings were hung on vast white walls, illuminated by professional lighting. They looked powerful, important. A sophisticated crowd of art critics, investors, and city socialites milled about, sipping champagne and speaking in hushed, appreciative tones. Amelia stood in a simple black dress, the first new piece of clothing she'd bought in years, her heart pounding against her ribs. This was it, the culmination of her gamble. Julian found her by her centerpiece, a large, emotionally charged portrait of a mother and child looking out a rain-streaked window. "You did it, Amelia," he said, his voice soft with pride. "They're breathtaking." "Thank you, Julian," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything. You have no idea what this means to me." "I think I do," he replied, his gaze warm. Just then the crowd near the entrance parted. Amelia's blood ran cold. Standing there, his face a mask of disbelief and fury, was Mark, and beside him, looking utterly stunned, was Tiffany. They had clearly come expecting a pathetic, amateurish display. What they found was a triumph. Mark's face cycled through a series of emotions: shock, confusion, and finally a deep, simmering rage. He couldn't reconcile the woman in the elegant black dress, the toast of this glamorous event, with the humiliated waitress in the stained apron he had mocked just a month ago. He scanned the room, his eyes wide, taking in the massive, powerful paintings, the well-heeled guests, and the sheer scale of the exhibition. This wasn't a hobby. This was a professional coup. Tiffany, for her part, looked like a fish out of water. Her flashy, skin-tight dress seemed garish and cheap under the sophisticated gallery lighting. She tugged at Mark's sleeve, whispering furiously, but he ignored her, his eyes locked on Amelia. He began striding towards her, a storm cloud of resentment gathering on his brow. Julian, sensing the impending confrontation, subtly moved to stand slightly in front of Amelia, a protective gesture that was both discreet and unmistakable. "What is this, Amelia?" Mark demanded when he reached them, his voice a low growl. "What kind of game are you playing?" Amelia lifted her chin, the fear that he once inspired in her now replaced by a calm, steady resolve. "It's not a game, Mark. It's my art exhibition." "Your exhibition," he scoffed, gesturing around the opulent lobby. "Don't be ridiculous. You couldn't afford to rent a closet for a night, let alone this. Who are you sleeping with to pay for all this?" His eyes flickered contemptuously toward Julian. Before Amelia could respond, Julian stepped forward. He extended a hand to Mark, his expression perfectly neutral. "Mark Vance, I presume." "Of Vance. Financial." Julian said, his voice smooth as silk but with an undercurrent of steel. "We haven't been formally introduced. I'm Julian Thorne." The name hit Mark like a physical blow. His jaw went slack and the color drained from his face. Julian Thorne. The Julian Thorne. CEO of Sterling Properties and, more importantly, the head of Sterling Innovations, the venture capital firm Mark had been desperately trying to court for months. Vance Financial was on shaky ground, and a partnership with Sterling was the lifeline his company desperately needed. He had been buttering up Thorne's junior executives, sending gift baskets and pulling every string he could just to get a 10-minute meeting. And here he was, standing in front of the man himself, having just insulted the woman on his arm. Mr. Thorne." Mark stammered, his arrogance instantly evaporating, replaced by a desperate, fawning panic. He shot a frantic look at Amelia, the pieces clicking into place in his mind in the most horrifying way possible. I had no idea. This is your event. It is. Julian confirmed, his voice dropping a few degrees colder. Sterling Properties is proud to sponsor Ms. Vance's inaugural solo exhibition. We believe she is one of the most significant emerging talents in the city. Her work has integrity, depth, and a powerful voice. Qualities I find to be in short supply these days. Every word was a perfectly aimed shot at Mark's character. Julian's gaze never left Mark's, and in that moment Mark understood. This wasn't just business. It was personal. Tiffany, oblivious to the corporate power play unfolding, tried to salvage the situation. "Mark, honey, isn't this wonderful for Amelia?" she said with a painfully fake smile. "We're so proud of you." Amelia simply looked at her, and for the first time she felt nothing but pity for the young woman who had attached herself to such a hollow man. Mark, scrambling now, tried to change tactics. "Amelia. My God, why didn't you tell me? I always knew you had it in you. I always supported your art, didn't I, baby?" The sudden shift from tormentor to cheerleader was so jarring it was almost comical. I was just joking with you at the café, just trying to motivate you. You know, tough love." The assembled guests, who had been trying to politely ignore the scene, were now listening with rapt attention. The pathetic desperation in Mark's voice was impossible to miss. Amelia looked him dead in the eye. The years of being belittled, of being made to feel small and worthless, coalesced into a single moment of crystalline clarity. "No, Mark," she said, her voice ringing with newfound strength. "You told me my art was a pipe dream. You told me I was dead weight. You stood in my workplace and tried to humiliate me in front of my colleagues. There was no love in it, just cruelty." She then turned to Julian, a genuine radiant smile transforming her face. "But I should thank you. Your cruelty was the motivation I needed. It lit a fire under me that I thought had gone out a long time ago." Julian's expression softened as he looked at her, a deep, undisguised admiration in his eyes. He gently placed a hand on the small of her back. "The fire was always there, Amelia. You just needed the right space to let it burn." He then turned his attention back to the pale, sweating Mark. "Mr. Vance," Julian said, his voice now crisp and dismissive, "my team has been reviewing your firm's proposal. After this display, I can tell you with certainty that Sterling Innovations will not be entering into a partnership with a man of your character. We value integrity as much as we value profit. You, it seems, have neither. Now I believe you were just leaving." It was a public execution. Mark stood there, utterly destroyed, the architect of his own ruin. The hushed whispers of the crowd were like the rustling of his career's obituary. Without another word, he turned, grabbed a stunned Tiffany by the arm, and practically fled from the gallery, his power and prestige dissolving with every step. As the doors swung shut behind him, a spontaneous applause broke out in the room. It started with Clara, who had come to support her, and quickly spread. People weren't just clapping for the art, they were clapping for her victory. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes, not of sadness or pain, but of profound, overwhelming relief. Julian turned to her, his hands gently framing her face. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "This is your night, Amelia Vance," he whispered, his voice for her alone. "The first of many." And in that moment, surrounded by her soul laid bare on canvases, under the warm and steady gaze of the man who had seen her when she felt invisible, Amelia knew he was right. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The aftermath of the exhibition was a whirlwind. Mark's public humiliation at the hands of Julian Thorne became the talk of the town's financial and social circles. News of his failed bid for the Sterling partnership spread like wildfire, causing his investors to panic. His company, already on unstable footing, began to crumble. Within weeks, Vance Financial was facing a catastrophic collapse. Mark, the man who defined his worth by his wealth and status, was losing both at an astonishing rate. Amelia, conversely, was skyrocketing. Her exhibition was a critical and commercial success. A glowing review in the city's most prestigious art journal hailed her as A powerful new voice painting the beautiful, brutal truths of modern survival. Collectors clamored for her work. By the end of the week, every single piece from the show had sold, earning her a sum of money that was truly life-altering. She was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. The first thing she did was move. She found a beautiful, light-filled two-bedroom apartment in a safe, quiet neighborhood with a good school for Lily. One of the bedrooms became her dedicated studio, a real one with vast windows overlooking a park. Watching Lily run around her own spacious room squealing with delight was a joy so pure it brought tears to Amelia's eyes. She paid off her legal debts, bought a reliable car, and set up a college fund for her daughter. She had built a fortress of security for them brick by brick with her own two hands and her own talent. Her relationship with Julian deepened, evolving naturally from friendship and mutual respect into a slow-burning, tender romance. He was unlike any man she had ever known. He was patient, kind, and deeply supportive of her career. He celebrated her successes as if they were his own and provided a quiet, steady presence on days when the pressure felt overwhelming. Their dates weren't extravagant displays of wealth, but intimate moments of connection. They'd spend hours in museums discussing the nuances of a Rembrandt or a Rothko. They'd take Lily to the park on Sundays, Julian pushing her on the swings with a genuine smile on his face. He fell in love not just with Amelia, but with her small, fierce family. Lily, who had been cautious and shy since the divorce, adored him. She would crawl into his lap with a picture book, and he would read to her with a gentle patience that melted Amelia's heart. One crisp autumn evening, about 3 months after the exhibition, Julian took Amelia to the construction site of his latest project. It was a towering skyscraper that was still just a steel skeleton against the twilight sky. They took a construction elevator to the top floor, the wind whipping around them. The view was spectacular, a glittering tapestry of city lights stretching to the horizon. "It's beautiful," Amelia breathed, clutching his arm. "I wanted to show you something," Julian said, leading her to a specific corner of the unfinished floor. He pointed downwards. "From right here you can see the café where you used to work. And over there, that's the courthouse where your divorce was finalized. And that little speck of light, that's the park near your old apartment." He turned to face her, his hands finding hers. "I wanted you to see it all from up here, Amelia, to see how small it all looks from a new perspective. You've risen so far above it." Amelia felt a lump form in her throat. He understood. He saw the whole arc of her journey, the pain and the triumph. "I didn't do it alone," she said softly. "You gave me the chance, Julian. You saw me when I thought I was invisible. I saw an incredible artist and an even more incredible woman." He replied, his voice earnest. "I just opened a door. You were the one who had the courage to walk through it and build a whole new world on the other side." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Amelia's heart stopped. "I know it's fast," he began, his usual confidence replaced by a touching vulnerability. "But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I don't want to be the man who just opens doors for you, Amelia. I want to be the man who walks through them with you for the rest of our lives. I want to build a family with you and Lily. I want to wake up to your smile every morning and be the man who deserves the love of a woman as strong and brilliant as you." He opened the box. Inside was a stunning, elegantly understated diamond ring. Its simple, clean lines reminded her of his own character, strong, classic, and without pretense. "Amelia Vance," he said, his eyes searching hers in the fading light. "Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, unable to speak. "Yes," she finally whispered. "Yes, Julian. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. He drew her into his arms, and they kissed high above the city that had witnessed her fall and her extraordinary rise. The ghosts of her past were now just distant lights in a city that lay at her feet, a city where she was finally home. News of Amelia and Julian's engagement made quiet ripples through the circles they now inhabited. It was a testament to their private nature that it wasn't a splashy media announcement, but a happy truth shared with close friends and family. For Amelia, it was the final, beautiful brushstroke on the new canvas of her life. She was commissioning new works, planning her wedding, and most importantly enjoying the simple, profound joy of a stable, loving home with Lily and Julian. But the past, as it often does, had one last card to play. One afternoon, Amelia received a registered letter. It was from Mark's lawyer. Her heart seized with a familiar dread, but as she read, dread turned to disbelief. Mark was suing her. He was petitioning the court for a new settlement, claiming that she had hidden significant earning potential during their divorce proceedings. He argued that her recent success was proof that she had maliciously misrepresented her financial situation and that he was therefore entitled to a substantial portion of her art sales and a reduction in his child support payments, which she knew he had often paid late anyway. It was ludicrous, a desperate, pathetic money grab from a drowning man. Julian's lawyers assured her it was an open and shut case that would be laughed out of court, but the violation of it stung. Mark was trying to claim ownership of her triumph to taint her success by framing it as a deception against him. The court date was set. Julian insisted on coming with her. His hand a warm, steady presence on her back as they walked up the courthouse steps, the same steps she had walked down 2 years prior, feeling utterly broken and alone. Mark was already there standing with his lawyer. He looked terrible. His expensive suit hung on a frame that was thinner and more stooped. His face was sallow, his eyes holding a haunted, desperate look. The swagger was gone, replaced by the sour stench of failure. Tiffany was nowhere in sight. Amelia had heard through the grapevine that she had left him as soon as the money started to dry up. When he saw Amelia looking poised and radiant in a sharp, well-tailored dress with Julian Thorne by her side, a flash of the old bitter resentment sparked in his eyes. They sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, a sterile, wood-paneled room that held so many painful memories for Amelia. Mark's lawyer began spinning a wild tale of Amelia's deceit, painting her as a cunning schemer who had plotted her success in secret to spite her ex-husband. When it was her lawyer's turn, she was calm and methodical. She presented evidence of Amelia's financial struggles, post-divorce, the termination notices, the low-wage pay stubs from the café, the bank statements showing a balance that often hovered near zero. Then the judge asked Amelia if she wished to make a statement. She hadn't planned to, but looking at Mark's bitter face, she knew she needed to. She stood, her voice not loud but clear and unwavering, filling the silent courtroom. "Your Honor," she began 2 years ago, "I left this courthouse with nothing but a box of personal belongings and a broken heart. My ex-husband, a man I had supported for over a decade, made sure of that. He called my passion, my art, a hobby and a drain on finances. He told me, and I quote, that I was dead weight he was glad to be rid of." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. She could see Mark flinch. "The success I have today was not hidden. It did not exist then. It was born in a cold one-bedroom apartment while my daughter slept. It was created with charcoal-stained fingers after 10-hour shifts washing dishes. It was fueled by desperation and a mother's promise to her child that things would get better. It was born from the ashes of the life this man burned to the ground." She then turned her gaze directly to Mark. For the first time, there was no fear, no pain, just a profound and final sense of closure. "You say you are entitled to a piece of my success. My success was built on every cruel word you ever said to me. It was built on every night I stayed up worrying about the rent while you were out buying champagne for your mistress. It was built in spite of you, not because of you. You are not entitled to my success. You are not entitled to my money. You are not entitled to one more second of my life." She finished and sat down, her heart pounding but her conscience clear. Julian reached over and squeezed her hand, his eyes shining with pride. The judge, a stern-faced woman who had seen it all, looked at Mark with an expression of utter disdain. She took no more than a minute to deliberate. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice sharp as glass, "not only is this petition denied, but I find it to be frivolous, vindictive, and an abuse of the court's time. I am ordering you to pay for Ms. Vance's entire legal fees for this matter." Furthermore, I will be launching a review of your compliance with the existing child support order. This court does not take kindly to parents who use their children as pawns in their bitter games. We are adjourned." The gavel fell with a sharp crack, a definitive final sound. It was over. Truly over. Mark sat there utterly defeated, his face ashen. He had lost everything. His company, his mistress, his reputation, and now this final pathetic attempt to claw something back from the woman he had so carelessly discarded. Amelia and Julian stood up and walked out of the courtroom, not looking back. As they stepped out into the bright sunshine, Amelia took a deep breath of the fresh, clean air. She was free. The last chain linking her to her old life had been broken. Ahead of her was only the light, her future, her family, and a canvas waiting for the next beautiful chapter. A year trickled by each day, a gentle brushstroke adding color and light to the canvas of Amelia's new life. On a perfect June afternoon, when the sun hung in the sky like a dollop of golden paint, she stood before a full-length mirror in a quiet room of Julian's country estate. The woman looking back at her was almost a stranger. The haunted, exhausted shadows that once lived beneath her eyes were gone, replaced by a serene confidence. Her hair, once perpetually tied back in a messy, functional bun, now fell in soft waves over the shoulders of a simple, exquisitely cut wedding gown. Lily, a vision in a simple white dress with a wreath of daisies in her hair, came and wrapped her arms around Amelia's legs. "You look like a queen, Mommy." Amelia knelt and cupped her daughter's face, her heart swelling with a love so fierce it almost hurt. "You know what?" she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Today I finally feel like one." She thought of the woman in the stained apron reeking of bleach and defeat, and sent a silent wave of gratitude to her past self for not giving up. There was no grand cathedral, no pomp or circumstance. Her aisle was a path mown through a field of wildflowers buzzing with the contented hum of bees. At the end of it, standing under the ancient sprawling branches of a majestic oak tree, was Julian. As she walked toward him, the breeze catching her veil, she saw the look on his face, not just of a man watching his bride approach, but of a partner witnessing a triumph he had the privilege to share. It was a look of profound respect, of boundless admiration, of a love that was a quiet, steady anchor in a world that had once been a raging storm. Their vows were not filled with flowery, archaic promises. They were a conversation, a pledge exchanged between equals. He promised to always champion her talent, to be the steady rock upon which she could build her dreams. She promised to always honor his integrity, to be the partner who would challenge and inspire him. They spoke of building a home, not just a house, and of raising Lily in a fortress of love and security. When they kissed, it was not the closing of a fairy tale, but the opening of a real and beautiful life. The reception was a joyful, sun-drenched affair. Laughter mingled with the sounds of a string quartet as their closest friends and family celebrated with them. Amelia watched as Julian lifted Lily into the air, her squeals of delight echoing through the fields. She found Clara by the champagne table, her old friend's eyes shining with tears. "Look at you, honey," Clara said, squeezing Amelia's hand. "I always knew that fire in you was too strong to be put out. I just never imagined it would burn this brightly." "I couldn't have kept the flame alive without you, Clara," Amelia replied, pulling her into a fierce hug. As twilight began to blanket the landscape in hues of lavender and rose, Julian took her hand. "There's one more thing," he said, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. He led her away from the music and laughter across a small stone bridge to a part of the property she hadn't seen before. There, nestled in a grove of birch trees, was a stunning modern building made of glass and warm cedar. It seemed to glow from within as the last rays of sunlight struck it. It was both a part of the landscape and a masterpiece of design. "Julian, what is this?" Amelia breathed, her steps slowing as they approached. "A workspace," he said, simply pushing open the large glass doors. The air inside smelled of fresh wood, canvas, and possibility. It was the most magnificent art studio she could have ever imagined. A towering wall of glass faced north, flooding the room with the perfect indirect light that painters dream of, Canvases of every size were neatly stacked against one wall. An entire shelving system was filled with paints, brushes, and supplies of the highest quality. In the center of the vast polished concrete floor stood a single state-of-the-art easel. Amelia walked slowly through the space, running her hand along a pristine workbench. She thought of her old studio, the corner of a cramped living room, her supplies stored in a shoebox, the constant fear of Lily knocking over a jar of turpentine. This space, this gift, was such a profound testament to how well he knew her, how deeply he understood what she needed not just to live, but to thrive. On the easel there was no canvas. Instead, there was a single framed document. She stepped closer to read it. It was the deed. The studio and the acre of land it stood on was hers. The name on the document was Amelia Vance Thorne. "A queen needs her own domain," Julian said softly, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his chin on her shoulder. "A place that is entirely, completely yours, no matter what." Tears of pure, unadulterated joy streamed down Amelia's face. She leaned back against his solid warmth, looking out at the world through the glass wall of her sanctuary. This was not the act of a millionaire claiming his bride. This was the act of a man honoring his wife, the artist. He hadn't bought her a cage, however gilded. He had built her a pair of wings. She was home. Amelia's story isn't just about going from rags to riches. It's a powerful reminder that your worth is never determined by someone else's opinion of you. It's not defined by your bank account, your job, or your relationship status. Her ex-husband thought he could break her by taking everything away, but he couldn't take her talent, her spirit, or her resilience. She found strength not in a man who rescued her, but in a man who saw the strength that was already there. She turned her greatest pain into her most beautiful masterpiece. So many of us have faced moments where we felt worthless or forgotten. We've all had someone try to dim our light. If Amelia's journey from a heartbroken waitress to a celebrated artist and a cherished bride touched your heart, please let us know in the comments. Share a time you overcame a challenge that made you stronger. Your story could be the inspiration someone else needs to hear today. And of course, if you enjoyed this story, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing it with someone who needs a dose of hope, and subscribing to our channel for more real-life stories that will move and inspire you. Thank you for listening.